All right, good morning, everyone. It is 9:04. We'll call this meeting of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy to order. As is customary, I'm going to go ahead and read our mission statement. The Texas State Board of Pharmacy is a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall uphold quality standards for licensing and facilitate regulations that promote innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education, which produce quality care and positive patient outcomes. We have a few announcements. Just as a reminder, the mics are hot, so you want to make sure that you're not having these sidebar conversations because they may be picked up. Restrooms are located to the left of the exit just past the elevator, so be aware of that. There are QR codes in the back for the agenda and the Wi-Fi password. As far as continuing education, about lunchtime, the QR code will be put up for the ability for you to get CE. And with that, I'll ask Megan to go ahead and take roll.
Julie's here.
Here.
Suzette Tiarina.
Here.
Donna Montemayor. Here. Lori Hinkie. Here. Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Donnie Lewis.
Here.
Jenny Yoakum. Here. Daniel Guerrero.
Here.
Bradley Miller.
Here.
Ian Shaw. Absent. And Rick Tisch.
Here.
Quorum.
All right. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the discussion and approval of minutes. Board members, those are sent to you in advance. I'd like to see if there are any changes that need to be made, and if not, if I can have a motion to approve. And I'll second. I have a motion from Suzette and a second from Lori. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the May 2nd meeting. With that, I will ask John to come forward to start us off with our C1.
All right. In the rule PDFs that are provided to you, there are bookmarks, links, lines with edits. Also, for the rules for adoption, you have received copies of the orders and preambles and the OneDrive link that was sent to you, and you have them on your computers. So with the rules for adoption, all the rules up for adoption today were proposed at the May 2nd, 2023 board meeting and published in the June 16, 2023 issue of the Texas Register. We are going to do the first two together. The first one is C1.1. So amendments 280, the first amendments 283.4 concerning internship requirements. This rule amendment came out of discussion at the May board meeting. And these amendments extend the period that internship hours may be used for licensure from 2 years to 3 years from the date the internship is completed. So on line 122, you will see it amends the length of time internship hours may be used for licensure to 3 years from the date the internship is completed. It simply changes the 2 years to 3 years. We did not receive any comments on this rule. The next one we're going to do together is C1.2. These are amendments 283.6 concerning preceptor requirements and ratio of preceptors to Pharmacist-Interns. And on lines 52 to 54, you will see that it removes the preceptor requirement of having 6 months of residency training if the pharmacy resident is completing a residency program that is accredited by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. Residency program no longer has to be accredited by them. This is related to a change requested by the Texas Society of Health System Pharmacists to not require a Pharmacist-Interns residency program to be accredited by ACPE. If the residency program no longer needs to be accredited by ACPE, it is logical that we would no longer require the preceptor to have at least 6 months of training in an ASHP residency program. And there were no comments received on this rule either.
All right, so board, we're looking at these two together. Any comments? We have a motion to adopt. Make a motion. Donnie Lewis has made a motion to adopt. Bradley Miller has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next one we have is C.1.3. This regards a new rule, 291.12, concerning delivery of prescription drugs. As I said, this is a new rule that was proposed following discussion at the May board. And in your PDF, you will see two versions of this rule. And the one you want to click on is the one that says revised. In the revised version, you're going to see a couple things. You're going to see some yellow highlighting, and that is what was proposed following the May meeting. And then the blue highlighting is staff suggested revisions based on comments received. So when we start at lines 43 through 44, you will see it only applies to delivery by Class A, Class AS, Class E, or Class ES pharmacies. Lines 45 through 47, it allows delivery by a common carrier to U.S. mail. When delivering by mail, lines 48 through 63 set out that the prescription drugs be delivered to the patient or patient's agent in accordance with standards of the manufacturer or the USP. The packaging shall be tamper-proof and tamper-evident mailers used that are resistant to tearing and moisture. The pharmacy has to ensure the integrity of any prescription drug requiring temperature control other than room temperature storage, as defined in 291.15 of this title, and that's relating to the storage of drugs that is delivered by mail. Pharmacies shall use temperature tags, time temperature strips, insulated packaging, gel ice packs, or a combination of these as necessary. If there are any irregularities in delivery, the pharmacy shall provide a method by which the patient or patient's agent can notify the pharmacy as to any irregularity of the delivery of the patient's prescription, to include, but not limited to, the timeliness of delivery, the condition of the prescription drug upon delivery, and the failure to receive the proper prescription drug. Starting on line 64, it talks about replacement. If a prescription drug is in any way compromised during delivery, the pharmacy shall replace the drug or arrange for the drug to be replaced, either by promptly delivering a replacement to the patient or by promptly contacting the prescriber to arrange for the drug to be dispensed to the patient by a pharmacy or the patient or patient's agent's choice. On line 69, it talks about refusal to deliver. The pharmacy shall refuse to deliver by mail a prescription drug which, in the professional opinion of the pharmacist, may be clinically compromised by delivery by mail. On line 72, it talks about delivery by pharmacy employees. Pharmacy may deliver prescription drugs by means of its employees, as provided in 291.9 of this title, on request of the patient or patient's agent. For standards, the pharmacy is responsible for any problems with the delivery of a prescription drug. And then on line 76, you can see that we struck through, based on the comments, the delivery shall be on a continuous route from the pharmacy, patient, or patient's agent. See that. On line 78, it talks about the temperature. Prescription drug shall be maintained within the temperature range recommended by the manufacturer until the delivery has been, and then on line 79, what's been added is received by the patient or patient's agent, and the word completed is struck through. On line 81, all deliveries. A pharmacy that delivers prescription drugs by mail or by pharmacy employees all should comply with the following. Line 83 requires counseling information. Pharmacy shall comply with the requirements of 291.33C1F of this title. Relying on line 85, you'll see notification of delivery. Pharmacy shall notify the patient or patient's agent of the delivery of a prescription drug. The notification shall provide information to the patient or patient's agent about the timeliness in addressing the proper storage of the prescription drug. The pharmacy shall document and maintain a record of that notification. Line 89 discusses the required signature. The pharmacy shall require the patient or patient's agent to sign for delivery if the prescription drug, and then on line 90, this is suggested language, is required to be maintained at a cold temperature as defined by 291.15 of this title, and in the professional opinion of a pharmacist is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended. If the drug cannot be delivered with a signature, package may not be left unattended, shall be returned, be held for pickup, or re-delivered on the request of the patient or patient's agent. On line 95, it talks about compromised delivery. Pharmacy shall include with the delivery the procedures for the patient or patient's agent to follow if the prescription drug does not arrive in a timely manner, or if the integrity of the packaging of prescription drug has been compromised during delivery. On line 99, it discusses records. Pharmacy shall maintain records for 2 years on the following events: when a prescription drug was sent to the patient or patient's agent, patient complaints, audits regarding the timeliness of deliveries, prescription drugs that were compromised in delivery, and the failure of a patient to receive a prescription drug delivery. Finally, on line 104, it talks about controlled substances and requires a pharmacy to comply with all state and federal laws and rules relating to the delivery of controlled substances. Regarding this rule, there were multiple comments. The first comment we received was from Rob Geddes, Albertsons Companies, suggesting the removal of the requirement that delivery be on a continuous route from the pharmacy to the patient or patient's agent, and the requirement to obtain a signature on any prescription drug delivery that is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended. We received a comment from Richard Tusky with Alliance RX Walgreens Pharmacy, suggesting the standards be aligned with the language in Board Rule 291-125, suggesting the refusal to deliver requirement specified the dispensing pharmacist, and suggesting the removal of the requirement to obtain a signature on any prescription drug delivery that is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended. The next comment was from Scott Clark, Centerville Pharmacy, suggesting the removal of the requirement to obtain a signature on any prescription drug delivery that is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended. We received a comment from Lauren Paul with CVS Health in support of the proposed rule and suggesting changes to the standards and general requirements for delivery by mail, the standards, temperature, and general requirements for delivery by pharmacy employees, and the notification and signature requirements for all deliveries, also suggesting the removal of the requirement that delivery be on a continuous route from pharmacy to the patient or patient's agent for delivery by a pharmacy employee. The next comment was from Express Scripts Credo Health Group, suggesting changes to the standards, temperature, replacement requirements for delivery by mail, and the notification and records requirements for all deliveries, and suggesting the requirement to obtain a signature on any prescription drug delivery that is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended to be removed or modified to be discretionary for the pharmacy and applicable to the delivery of any prescription drug. We received a comment from Pierre Felstad with the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, suggesting changes to the standards, packaging, temperature, replacement, and general requirements for delivery by mail, the standards and temperature requirements for delivery by pharmacy employee, and the notification and signature requirements for all deliveries. Also suggesting the removal of the requirement that delivery be on a continuous route to pharmacy, the patient or patient's agent for delivery by a pharmacy employee, and the counseling information requirement for all deliveries. We also received a comment from Janu Phillip with Walgreens Company, suggesting changes to the standards, packaging, and temperature requirements for both delivery by mail and delivery by pharmacy employee, and suggesting the removal of the requirement to obtain a signature on any prescription drug delivery that is reasonably likely to be compromised if left unattended. We also received a comment from Loretta Bosing with Unite for Safe Medications in support of the rule, but also expressing concern that the standards for shipping may be vague and suggesting the inclusion of definitions for certain terms and phrases. Finally, we received comments from Dorothy Edwards, Elizabeth Kroger, NJ Kabbalah, and Elena Umastiva in support of the rule. Those are all the comments.
All right. Well, we do have individuals that would like to speak. We're going to limit you to 3 minutes, and we ask that you kind of pay attention to the individuals that come before you so that you're not duplicating comments. So at this time, we will ask Loretta Bosing of the Self Unite for Safe Medications to come forward.
Thank you so much to the Board of Pharmacy for making the changes and suggestions to the rules today. I know it's hard work and it's greatly appreciated. A 90-year-old veteran concerned about this issue once told me that the only thing necessary to triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. His story was one of many that was shared with NBC on this topic. In ADP in 1998, when this issue was brought up, they did nothing. And as PBMs continued to gain power, they began forcing patients like my son to their mail-order pharmacy that doesn't regulate the temperatures, especially at room temperature medication. PICMA in the past has showed up at Board of Pharmacy meetings saying that the temperature regulations of medication through transit isn't, it's based on science. It's very much based on science. And there's plenty of scientific studies that show that medications can break down in many ways when exposed to temperatures of 120 to 170 degrees during transit, such as what's happening today in Texas. Medications may be studied up to 120 degrees, but that's in no way indicates this medication should be stored in these temperatures. That's an accelerated temperature study that guarantees that the medication will be stable when stored at room temperature over the time life of the drug. Expiration dates may no longer be guaranteed when meds are stored outside those temperature extremes. What would happen to me if I put my son's medications in unsafe temperatures, knowing that his life would be at risk? The same should happen to the CEOs and lobbyists today that don't want to do the right thing and protect medications by mail. Right now, patients, they don't know if their condition's worse than if it could be from the unsafe storage of medication. Sometimes the only way that we know is to play this unethical game. And for children and patients like my son, the harm may not happen suddenly, it can happen over time. A lower potency medication can have impacts. For example, my son, he's a transplant recipient, and every time that he goes into rejection, his body may eventually figure out how to fight off his transplanted organ. As I'm sitting here today, my son may be in transplant rejection. So, he gave me a tight hug before I left, and it was kind of like, Mom, we're doing it. So I'm just going to please, I know that this regulation today is just a start. It's a beginning in the right direction. I urge the board not to just stop here. Envision a safer storage of medications through transit. Envision it and believe that it can happen, and we can start here and hopefully eventually get it throughout the supply chain. Lives depend on this issue, and I again appreciate you all for taking it seriously and for at least trying. I do think that some of the terminology needs to be a little bit more like defining USP and drug manufacturers. What does that mean? What USP rule? Drug manufacturers, most are not going to say it's okay to ship these meds unprotected at 170 degrees. Just please consider that the promptly that may be need to be defined. I'm sorry, I skipped through a lot of what I was going to say due to time, but again, just appreciate a lot.
Thank you again for coming forward. With that, we'll ask Lauren Hall from CDS Health to come forward.
Good morning, Lauren Paul with CBS Health. I just wanted to say that we appreciate the board staff's recommended amendments to the rules that were proposed to you this morning. And we do look forward to what we will anticipate a robust discussion. I apologize. Robust discussion on the other areas that were submitted for written comments around standards and also required signatures. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you for addressing this topic, and we look forward to discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And next we'll hear from Jeannie Phillips from Walgreens.
Morning, board members. Morning, my name is Jimmy Phillip, Director of Pharmacy Affairs for the Warren Company. So thank you, President Spear, for the opportunity to speak today. So just for a quick background, I've spent the last 25 years in community pharmacy and serve in various positions and now currently serve as Director of Pharmacy Affairs for Walgreens. I also serve as the current chair of the Florida board and been a board member in Florida for 10 years. So I recognize the intent of the rule in favor of having safe delivery of medications, and we're definitely aligned with the board in terms of coming out with balanced regulations that regulate the safe delivery to ensure patients are taking medications that have not been adulterated. There were a few changes that the board has already made, which we do agree with. What I would like to point out, though, is within your sections for sections B and C under delivered by mail, as well as delivery by employee, the board already has some language within your existing rules under the centralized prescription dispensing under 291.125 for standards for packaging and shipping. And it reads, pharmacies shall utilize adequate storage or shipment materials, containers, and shipping processes to ensure drug stability and potency. Such shipping processes shall include the use of appropriate packaging material and or devices to ensure that the drug is maintained at an appropriate temperature range as allowed by USP standards to maintain the integrity of the medication throughout the delivery process. And my point here is that this language exists today. I think it encompasses all you're trying to accomplish within the delivery rules in terms of the safe delivery of medications. My suggestion is simply to use that language. I did add in by USP standards within that existing language just to reference a specific body. But that's the only thing I added in that language I just read. So my recommendation is to strike the other language around standards and packaging and temperature and just use this language that you already created. And in this way, it also aligns with your other delivery section. The other, in terms of the signature requirements, I'm glad that you guys did amend it to limit it to cold chain. I still don't think it's necessary. We have not seen an issue related to this, and unless there's an issue that signatures are absolutely necessary, and there's complaints as a result from from patients that raise to the level that it's necessary, regulations that are being written without necessity should be stricken in our opinion. So those are the comments that I'd like to make, and I appreciate the board's time.
At this time, we'll call Debbie Garza from the Texas Pharmacists.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. I'm Debbie Garza, the CEO of the Texas Pharmacy Association. Appreciate the opportunity to provide oral comments regarding the delivery of prescription drugs. I think we recognize there's kind of two pieces from these rules, one being from the mail order perspective, one being from the delivery by an employee. And with regards to the mail order, I'm not going to speak a lot to that because not a lot is mailed necessarily from community pharmacies, both independent and chain. But we do have a comment that we do believe there should be consistencies in terms of what has to happen in mail, whether it be mail or retail. But one thing I do want to talk about has to do with the delivery by the employee. And so as these rules are written, we do not support them. We ask that you vote no these rules as written because there is concern that this will significantly impact access to needed medications that many, particularly many of our independent pharmacist members, do day in and day out with the delivery of prescription drugs. Again, knowing that y'all have changed the issue around the continuous route, that was a big issue, not just for making sure the drug gets taken, but also with many pharmacies not even community health workers, delivery of DME and other things. Sometimes the prescriptions go with that. But with regards to the notification of delivery, because when they deliver, they have to get a signature, and that signature is many times tied to the requirements of the pharmacy benefits managers for making sure they get paid for the medication and not have that money taken back. So there is some feeling that why do I have to put in some huge process around notification when I've gotten the signature? And that signature basically they picked it up, so they've received it. So that's the notification. Why do we have to go that additional step that they believe is duplicative? With regards to just some of the things you've heard, there is a lot of questions around what some things mean, the vagueness, and particularly when it does come to mail, tamper-proof versus tamper-evident,
You know, it's because it says tamper proof and tamper evident. What is that? Does that mean lockbox? I think there's concerns as it relates to the introductory statement that there's no fiscal cost or state impact. Our independents say, no, this is a cost significantly if I have to do things differently compared particularly to the teeny amount that they receive as it relates to reimbursement for delivery of prescriptions. So the reason, you know, our concerns are one is expressed today is really asking that you kind of step back. These are pretty detailed rules. You've got two sides here, totally understand the need of mail and sitting in mailboxes for days and, you know, weeks or sitting on front porches with this temperature, but you also got the delivery piece caught up in there as well. That happens day in, day out throughout the state. People don't have access to their medications. And if it weren't for them being delivered, they would not receive their medications by somebody in person like that day. So with that, I would respectfully ask that you do vote no on this. You go back to look at all the implications of these rules and make sure that we don't have an unintended consequence of impacting access. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And our last speaker will be Jason Davis from HD.
Morning, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to thank board members of the board and the board staff for allowing me some time. I am the manager for pharmacy compliance for HEB Pharmacy, and we're the state of Texas. I'm not going to go detailed into the comments because I think that has been handled by other companies with what they've submitted. But HEB agrees with a lot of the comments regarding the specific language within the rule. We've been supportive of this. We are supportive of this type of rule, protecting the integrity of medications that are delivered to patients. It's a big part of our business now. And we would like to express support, but we would like to express support for the concerns that have been laid forth, because these requirements could be pretty onerous for a lot of pharmacies in Texas and would potentially hurt patient access. That's our concern. We're in favor of some changes to the language requiring signature requirements to allow more flexibility, because this could prevent access for seniors, patients that are unable to get up in time for deliveries. We applaud the staff for taking out the requirement regarding continuous route. Additionally, we would feel that there would be some difficulty regarding the notification requirements. At HEB, we contact the patient prior to delivery and set up the delivery, and the driver will then contact the patient as they are approaching the house with the medication. The documentation part of that, we're not sure how that would happen, what would have to change, how much would that cost. And also the record keeping requirements that are entailed with that. Finally, we do agree with the concerns regarding cost of compliance that some other companies have mentioned. I think there will be a cost if this rule is allowed to go forward as it's written. We would simply urge the board to vote no. Let's, as Debbie said, take a step back, look at these rules, take some of these comments more into consideration before passing the rule, and just slow it down a little bit. We do think it's important enough that this be given. All I have. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, let's open it up for discussion, and if you want to ask a question to somebody that has spoken, you can entertain that as well.
I have a question for Debbie Garza. What did you find when you're talking to your independent members? What do they think is the significant cost impact to their pharmacy in our rule?
Great question, Donnie. So in talking with them, again, there's two pieces, right? There's the mail piece. So there's questions around some of the vagueness, not having the full out definitions as to what does that look like? Is that just a tamper resistant tape that I put on the envelope that I mail it, or is it some kind of special lockbox or things like that? So I think that's the piece. The delivery was more around where the comments stemmed, and some of them had to do with the notification piece, because as I said, they're getting signatures, their delivery person is getting those signatures and such, and now if I've got to put in a whole new program, software, something that notifies them, and similar to what Jason said from HEB, they do it at the beginning, right? The person has said, I want my prescription delivered, and it says it's gonna be there today, right? And then once the person signed for it, it's there. But now you gotta go above and beyond and have a process that's notified them. It was just delivered when they should know it was just delivered because they just signed for it, and then maintaining those pieces. So that was the main concern. There was this feeling that it truly was so detailed, but they didn't know what some of the things meant. And I was at the May board meeting. I totally understand the intent of this and 100% agree. You know, some medications sit in the mailboxes and things, but I think that there's a difference from some of the delivery pieces. And I'm not sure if that got looked at kind of from the two different sides. And that's the reason why it's not that we're opposed to some of these requirements, but as written, there was just more confusion and more concerns about it's going to be pretty costly. And those of you that know independent pharmacy, their margins, they're constantly squeezed in what they get for delivery, as any community retail pharmacy is so narrow that they just had significant concerns. I just felt, hey, can we kind of talk about what this all looks like versus having it all together, whether your delivery is mail or an employee piece.
Follow-up question, that's okay. So if it's delivered and there's no signature required, then what happens if the patient then says, I never got it? How do you follow?
Not having practiced in independent pharmacy, but definitely recognize what I hear from the independent is, it's first off, most, I'm not gonna say all 100%, but majority have the signature requirement because of their concerns about callbacks from pharmacy benefits managers on their reimbursement fees, or they're the agent. But by the same token, I've heard from some that they deliver to nursing homes and they actually have the keys to put those into their room. You know what I mean? At the nursing home or assisted living facility to put it into their room. They have their delivery person has those keys. But as with anything, if somebody claims I didn't receive it, then the pharmacy immediately works to get them the medication out there. So be it, and a lot of times they do deliveries that then are like at the end of the day, you know, because a lot of times if it's been prepared, they're going out in the morning and they're going to make their deliveries. In some cases in rural Texas, they're driving 25 or more miles, right, to get that medication delivered to that person. But if they said, well, I never received it, or somebody else picked it up or whatever, or received it, don't want to say pick up to confuse it. I mean, if you go to the pharmacy or if somebody else got that medication, then they will do whatever they can in their power to get that. If it wasn't delivery, and a lot of times they have that evening courier going out and picking up before they close, you know, at the end of the day there, after they get the medication.
So, not.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
So I do appreciate all the comments that have been sent in, both written and in today's meeting. And I truly support what we're trying to do. And we do have to strike a balance, right? We have, different streams of getting prescriptions, diseases protected, and all across the United States as well. And I think it's important that we try to figure out, and that's what we're trying to do here, is how do we encompass that in the rules that we're setting in place for delivery of prescription medication, regardless of where they're coming from. I think it would be difficult for us to just say, this is mail and this is, independent pharmacy, because we need to be somewhat concise, clear, that everybody is following the same guidance that we're providing, all of the pharmacies across Texas. And everyone's made really good points. I just don't think that we should try to separate things. We should figure out how we can do this as cohesively as possible, so that we're accomplishing, what we're trying to do here overall for our members in Texas. So, my recommendation, and I think we've heard this, is to really take a look at how we can make this a little easier, understandable, clearer for all the pharmacies in Texas, so that they're following all the things that we want to do and put in place to manage, delivery of prescriptions in Texas. How we do that, I mean, I know we have rules, they're very defined. We do have, separate for mail, separate for pharmacy deliveries. Can we combine those? The standards should be the same. The requirements should be the same. You know, that's just my opinion on, you know, how we approach this rather than taking it in two different, you know, perspectives. It should be a unified rule that says this is what we're going to do as we prepare for delivery of prescriptions. Yes, ma'am. So while I agree mostly with what you said, I do think though that there is a distinction between a driver taking something from the pharmacy and going to a person's home and it being put in the mail and going off into various places that we don't have control over. So I think that's why we do need to take a step back and maybe look at delivery continuously from the, not continuously, but from the independent, from the pharmacy, retailer, whoever, to the person versus putting it in the mail and it going off to this depot, that depot, and it could be hot and not, you know. We don't know if it's going to take an hour, if it's going to take 2 days, you know, whereas if you're delivering from a local pharmacy, it's going to get there that day. So you pretty much know it's going to be, you know, within a certain thing. I agree with what Debbie said. Most pharmacies get signatures because of PBM requirements to prove. So that notification piece, I think, is just a little sticky right now. I think we need to clear that up a little bit because it is very duplicative. And I gave it to you, I signed it, and then now let me tell you, I gave it to you when obviously got it. So if we could maybe clear that up a little bit. But I do think we need to have some distinction because there is a time difference, I believe, in when the patient gets it, if it's in the mail versus take it to their home.
I've got a question for Jenny. When y'all deliver, you deliver from a pharmacist to your clients, right? So how does that affect you? You deliver the day, just like Debbie was saying, most pharmacists do.
And we get a signature at the time. You already have that signature on file.
And do you leave it? Do you leave it?
So we don't necessarily, our pharmacy, we don't deliver to patient homes, we
Oh.
deliver to nursing homes and.
Oh.
Every now and then we will have a delivery to a patient home, we still would get a signature.
Yeah.
But in either case, wherever it goes, we do get a signature on our delivery form.
Good.
Whether it's an insurance charged item or not.
Right, there you go.
Fernando.
My concern with a signature is you can make, it adds cost to some places with patient home, with signature requirement. Having it routed back potentially. And then where does it go from there? Back in. Not everybody gets signatures, so it's all the time. I get it. My wife gets in a cold chain drug. Don't have signatures and it's fine. So I think having a signature requirement is a cost thing. That it's not usually what we try to do with that cost to the process. That's my only concern of that is it's a little burdensome to require addition, the fee and cost. Now, you know, you can sort of require it, you can do it as part of your standards if you feel like it's necessary, especially with drugs. But I think the signature portion is probably an excessive thing that requires some cost within access to some patients. I think it's about 89.
Yes, sir.
So if there's no signature, I mean, the end signatures, it's something that is shipped and it's temperature regulated. But yet, the patient doesn't pick it up until a day later. Does the integrity of the drug change? Chemical, whatever. If the member does it, starts taking the drug a day later. I'm just saying, is there a liability?
I don't think there's a simple answer to that, you know, it depends on the drug, temperature.
Right, but I'm just saying is the liability that pharmacists. If they take it and there's a bad reaction to the outcome. Because they didn't know that they had administered that drug under a certain specific temperature. That's why there's something with the liability. In other words, you don't do the signature and the patient takes it several days later and it's regulated. So.
Does it take it or didn't pick up the package? I guess I'm.
Well, they didn't, let's say they just left it, they're on vacation, they come back a week later, it's been sitting, so
Oh.
for hundred
Yeah.
degrees.
I mean, I
Then
think that
they take it, they
Yeah, I think
administer
it
whatever it is.
should always have prerogative to say, this has been calling the pharmacy and say, hey, I received this, and,
But not everybody does.
well, okay, but
Let's just say that, let's just,
yeah, I mean, again, if they're gonna decide to take the medication, then there's severe risk, right? And do that, right? But I think, they have the prerogative to call the pharmacy and say, call them and say, listen, I just got back, put it on my report. Should I take it? Should I not take it? What? to do? You know what I mean? Because that's always an opportunity for any patient, to call the pharmacy, talk to the pharmacist, figure out what happened, product that they're on, get some advice, before they sort of take anything. If they feel
that would be the worst case.
exactly. I would agree.
I think to Rick, right, but also, the notification and delivery, if someone's on vacation, get notified, something's coming out, they're not home, so they would be sent. Patient, or in that situation, bring it up, right? You have written here that patients should be notified that's going to be delivered to them. There's an approximate time of arrival, obviously, right? Especially the patient.
Okay.
If there's they shouldn't be delivered to the patient home.
They should.
The notification of people's places.
Okay, well, thank you.
Before, right? Hey, this is gonna come on these.
Got it.
And then you probably call the pharmacy and say, I'm not gonna be here, so we hold the shipment. Can you send someone else? And there's opportunity to do any of that. Part of the- that would improve the integrity of the product. When it's.
Megan, has there been enough discussion, for your staff to make recommended tweaks or?
I think we
make
have
these changes?
I think we have an idea of where the pressure points are, that we could go back and look at the items that have been discussed and bring back. Suggested language changes.
So can we align that suggested language to what is in the, bill?
I think she's talking about 291, 125. We have,
I guess it depends on what you mean by a lie. They're not in conflict right now. Potential bill is more vague than what you have here. So if you
Will
want
that not need to be updated?
so what this rule applies to all pharmacies. The essential fill rule only
Right.
applies for simple fill. The essential fill would still have to comply. As long as there, we'll double check if there aren't any direct conflicts, and we could update it if you want. But as long as there's not a direct conflict, they have to, comply with full if they are doing that, because this applies to all pharmacies, and then if they're doing a fill, they have to use those rules. What are the standards would you consider other nationally accredited associations, URAC, things like that, outside of USC? That's a good question.
I think that's a burden that's too heavy to do. You think the max is where you're at, additional requirement that will create some problems for pharmacies to have to pay for delivery. So I think that's taking it. I appreciate the standards.
Yeah.
A lot of the specialty pharmacies use that,
Well, I don't think you're.
but I don't think we're going that far. Is that what
No,
you're
I'm
saying?
not implying that that's the only.
Okay.
Saying, hey, USP and other nationally accredited type of organizations that are recognized in the industry for, looking at the safety of healthcare, things of that nature.
Well, it would be and or, as you're saying.
In addition to.
Addition to. Those are suggestions to apply, you're saying?
Correct. And you're saying for a pharmacist to make the clinical study and not if they would require direct. Correct.
Okay, that
Right, that's, yeah, I knew y'all
I
were.
appreciate it.
So we're in accordance with the standards of, that.
But could Julie, it seems like there are a lot of changes, potential, that we could probably go round and round for a little bit with all the changes that potentially, so maybe we have a lot of comments. What we suggested is that maybe take it back, we run this again and try different things, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so, and I knew that we were probably to that point. So there are three things we could do. There could be a motion to adopt. There could be a motion to vote no. There can be a motion that we propose that it goes back to staff. And that we take it back to a proposed status so that it can be re-looked at, reevaluated. I think that one of the things that is super important in the conversation we've had is, our job is to protect the public. So we never want to become a barrier to access. And if there is a concern at all in that, we need to really look at that. So we have those three things that we can do. And it's really up to the pleasure of the board as to where we want to go with it. Yes, ma'am.
I move that. Sure. Okay. I move that we send it back to staff with reevaluation of the wording and more specificity or after the wording needs to be repropose it.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion from Donna and a second from Jenny. Yes.
And I appreciate the motion in a second. I'm curious, what does the timeline then look like as far as the potential of this coming back for eventual discussion and adopt? Does this move till the next board meeting?
What we would do is bring this back with the changes as a proposal for November.
Right.
For your audit. And then if you chose to vote to propose it at that time, it would go back out for public comment. So we could get comments on the changes that have been made, and then it would be up for adoption.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we currently have a motion and a second, so at this point we need a vote. All those in favor of sending it back?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll go ahead and turn that back. Thank you, and thank you everybody for all comments, both written and oral, and for the robust conversation, because I think that it's important that we do the right thing from the beginning. And with that, I will turn it back to John.
All right, the next we have up is C for adoption. Is C 1.4. This is a repeal of 291.24 concerning pharmacy residency programs. This rule was adopted as part of a statutory program that no longer exists. The entirety of subchapter T, chapter 61 of the Education Code was repealed 6 years ago via Senate Bill 22. We caught this as part of our search to remove references to ACPE accreditation for pharmacist-intern programs. So on line 42, you will see that it repeals the requirement that the standards for pharmacy residency programs shall be the standards required by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists Commission on credentialing.
Comment? And not, we have a motion to adopt. Nope. Donnie Lewis has made a motion to adopt. Rick Tisch has another second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Tom?
Our next one is C 1.5. This regards Rule 291.27, amendments concerning confidentiality. And very simply, on line 60, corrects a typographical error regarding the spelling of policies.
Do I have a motion?
Okay.
Lori has made a motion, and Daniel has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Andy opposed? Motion passes.
It's still a thing.
All right.
All right. Our next one is C 1.6. This is regarding Rule 291.121, amendments concerning both pharmacy services. In May, amendments were adopted that would allow remote pharmacy services to be provided using automated pharmacy system to be provided at healthcare facilities regulated Texas Health and Safety Code, specifically chapters 464, which regulates facilities treating persons with a chemical dependency, and 577, which are for private mental health hospitals and other mental health facilities. In response to a comment received, the board then proposed adding chapter 534 of the Health and Safety Code to be allowed to provide remote pharmacy services using automated pharmacy system. This would be for community centers, including community-based mental health and intellectual disability services. Therefore, on line 72, you'll see it adds a citation to chapter 534 of the Health and Safety Code. One comment was received and supported the amendment from Angela Babin from the Harris Center in Houston. There were no other comments.
Board members, your
Make
pleasure.
a motion to add.
Rich Tish has made a motion.
So,
Donnie has seconded. Barbara. All those in favor?
Alright,
Motion passed.
our next item is C 1.7, regarding Rule 291, 151, amendments concerning pharmacies located in a freestanding emergency medical care facility for Class Fs. This came from a suggestion from compliance for added clarity that a pharmacist should be verifying the perpetual inventory of controlled substances listed in Schedules 2 through 5 on a weekly basis. Again, this change was proposed by compliance staff to ensure that 291, 151 continues to mirror 291, 76 with regards to Class C pharmacies, freestanding ambulatory surgical centers. This amendment makes the same change that the board adopted at the February board meeting concerning 291, 76 to clarify that a pharmacist must verify the completeness and reconciliation of perpetual inventory of controlled substances. And so on line 568, it adds that a perpetual inventory of controlled substances listed in Schedules 2 through 5 shall be verified by a pharmacist and completeness reconciled at least in every calendar week that the pharmacy is open. There were no comments received regarding this rule.
Do I have a motion to adopt?
Motion.
Got Bradley with the motion, Rick Tish with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That will move to our first.
Listen, board members, you will see, we're gonna do the first two together. The first one is C 2.1.1. This is 283.12. Licenses for military service members, military veterans, military spouses. And what this essentially does is adds the words military service member regarding intern licenses. Senate Bill 422 from this session amended Chapter 55 of the Occupations Code. So again, this is a statutory requirement, legislative session. And so on lines 128 through 145, at multiple points, you will see that it adds the words military service member to the rule regarding how to obtain an intern pharmacist license. In conjunction with it, C 2.1.2, we're looking at 297.10, technician registration for military service members, military veterans, and military spouses. Again, this is a statutory requirement that came out of Senate Bill 422 that again amends Chapter 55 of the Occupations Code. If you look at lines 86 to 104, at multiple points, it adds the words military service member to the rule regarding how to obtain an intern pharmacist technician registration. There were no comments received regarding either.
Make a motion. Second.
Got Donnie with the motion, Brad with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Our next one for proposal is C 2.2.1 regarding required notifications. At the May board meeting, the board directed us to bring rules regarding the printing of pharmacy license certificates as was recommended by our internal auditors. These updates implement that recommendation of licenses be available electronically. These changes remove the requirement to return a previously issued license to the board. And we already allow pharmacists and pharmacy technicians to print electronic licenses and registrations. We will now be allowing pharmacies to do the same thing. So on lines 15 through and 43, it clarifies that the fee charged for processing the application is for a change of location, for the application for a change of name. On lines 11 and 39, it removes the requirement that the license be returned to the board. On line 68, it removes the requirement that the license be returned to the board by the previous owner. And what this does is clarifies the process that the pharmacy also does is clarifies the process the pharmacy must notify TSBP if a pharmacy temporarily closes due to a loss of a PIC. And that notice must be provided on a form provided by the board no later than the next business day after the PIC's departure. So this proposed change is on lines 229 to 233. And what it does is clarifies in rule the notification process for a temporary closing for the loss of PIC, which will be discussed. We're going to discuss that in the next rule 291.5 in a second. But this clarifies the notification be provided not later than the next business day after the date of departure of the PIC. Madam President, I think we'll take both these rules together. And the next one is C.2.2.2 regarding 291.5 regarding closing of pharmacy. And what this does is provides clarity regarding the temporary closing process. And we're trying to implement the same change as we just discussed at 291.3. So on line 55, it adds temporary closing. And on line 761 through 71, it allows a pharmacy to temporarily close for lack of a PIC for no more than 30 days. It also clarifies that the prescription department can only be accessed if a pharmacist is present. Clarifies the pharmacy notifies the board as specified in 291.3K and either reopen within 48 hours with supervision of a new PIC who has been reported to the board, or to comply with the provisions of the closing procedures outlined in subsection A of this rule as far in advance of closing as allowed by circumstances.
Questions, comments?
I have a question, John, on 291.3. How long does it take for a pharmacy to notify the board on that 65? Is it stated in 291.3?
I think the answer to your question is that when they have to temporarily close due to loss of a PIC, they have until the next business day after the PIC's departure to make that report.
Okay,
Do you see that on line 21, 22, or 231, 232, 233?
but I didn't have that. Yeah, okay.
The next business day.
That's
The next business. Okay.
after the departure.
So if they left on Friday, it would be.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Do I just want to talk through a little bit on the line 229 for a second? Understand the practicality of that. PIC moves, leaves, quits, wins the lottery, whatever. That temporary closing, obviously you want to have somebody in play pretty quick, obviously for the responsibility of the pharmacy. But I'm not understanding really what the time frame is here that's expected. Temporary closing, I know it's an emergency of some sort, but next business day may not be practical for a lot of places that have a PIC. Shouldn't be an extended amount. Well, what is this related to? You have to explain it.
I think you're reading more into it. So this is, a pharmacy that has possibly one pharmacist, and that pharmacist is the PIC, and they have no other pharmacist. And so they have to temporarily close. It's not a situation where you've got, relief backfilling until you can have your PIC and do PIC change. This is the pharmacy physically has to close and what they need to do to physically close.
And Rick, that next business day is just for the notification that they're temporarily closing. So if you go over to C.2.2, that's where it gives you, and the way they had to be presented the way they were, but it is a little backwards the way it was presented. So they're closing, they're allowed to do that for 30 days, but they can't operate during that time. So that's the time frame that they have to find PIC. They don't have to find any PIC to business. I don't know if that helps verify or not.
And the way you explain it makes sense. I get that. I just want to make sure that we don't look at this rule year or two, but not they get misinterpreted a different way. So I'm just trying to be really practical with that.
So, and this is also in line with what we do right now. If a pharmacy notifies us, like Julie said, that, they only have one pharmacist, they left, they haven't had time, we have considered that to be a disaster in the past and fight it, but it hasn't always been clear rule to people that could happen and that they could reach out to us about temporarily closing. So this is just to make it very clear for everyone that if they lose their PIC, they can't reach out to us to do a temporary closure. Otherwise, they're automatically in violation for not having a pharmacist in charge.
This happened to a pharmacy I know of in our area, and they were closed for 30 days. All those prescriptions were sitting there. You couldn't get your prescription. It was just a major issue in a little bitty town. And eventually it closed, and all those records went to a neighboring pharmacy, but it was a big issue.
So they were the only pharmacist.
Yes, and they closed. And they did this very same thing, they closed 30, 29 days. And they reopened, but in the major impact on patient population.
And that's what we're trying to avoid, so I think it makes sense. Back to that 229, is it possible to say if a pharmacy has temporarily closed? Because I think, again, there's an ambiguity with me as far as not everybody has to close, or the situation you're bringing up where they have one pharmacist and closed, that's the problem. Most of the other pharmacies don't have that situation. I just want to kind of fall into that interpretation that you lose a PIC, and they say you gotta do something, and then you notify it, obviously, but probably have to come up with a solution pretty quick. But I didn't know if we could say if they have to temporarily, because I think not every pharmacy falls into the process of having just one pharmacist on staff. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes you do have to go sometimes a day or two before you have a solution, you know, just because of the urgency or emergency of it. That's all I'm trying to say is to protect the pharmacy from having to be in violation potentially for.
So you're trying to say pharmacists in charge left, be a backup pharmacist. I think they open. That's kind of what you're trying to say.
Right, and
right?
not because they might even be the PIC.
Right, exactly. But you're just gonna tell the board, hey, my PIC's gone, but I'm still open. Kind of.
Yeah, and you have to
Right.
obviously figure it out quick.
Because this does imply that we have to close.
That was my reading. That's all.
That
right?
is referred to physically close. Physically, that's the word. Physically closing. Well, I just wonder, trying to. The temporary closure as provided by 291.5, that's defining the closure. So, I mean, maybe that's where urban things are not. It's that.
I mean, the way you describe it,
Closed versus we're still
yeah,
operating.
we describe it makes total sense. I just don't know if I someone can read that.
I see what you're saying.
Maybe that's ambiguous.
Like I have to close because I don't have a PI.
Sometimes it's different.
Well, if you're operating a pharmacy without a pharmacist in charge, that's a violation of board rules.
Correct.
So you would be doing something in violation of rules if you did not temporarily close.
Trying to frame
You
it.
don't have a PIC. I mean,
Right,
if
right.
you can just move your PIC over to your backup, then you're fine. But if you don't have a PIC and you're continuing to operate, that is a violation of board rules.
And I will make a point on independent pharmacies. They're not generally, most pharmacies don't have an array of pharmacists to work. Generally, it's small towns, they don't have. it.
Yeah.
Which is a PIC.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I understand the legality of what we're saying here. You have to have PIC. That isn't really the practicality of what happens in the real world, I think. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't want to be in violation anymore. That's the whole point. But the thing is, if you use someone on Friday, sometimes you'll have someone. I understand those days are, will get in trouble. And I know the board can do some discretion and whatnot in that process, but I would imagine, but that's the concern I would have, just being real with some of the staffing issues that could occur in some places.
So from a legal standpoint, in your scenario, you would need to close for those days.
I mean,
The
we're saying
2
we're
or
having
3
PIC.
days. That, then while you're waiting, and
Right.
then you have your new PIC in place and then you continue.
That's the
operating.
concern, right?
But if there's a pharmacist available to at least maybe transfer those prescriptions out. But yet they don't want to be the PIC, they still have to close.
You're required to have a pharmacist in charge in order to operate a pharmacy. It is a violation of the board rule to operate a pharmacy without a pharmacist.
I think that based upon what I'm hearing, I feel like there should be some work, something.
Possibly, or, you know, see some comments.
Yeah.
See what they want to think.
I mean,
Just because I think, we don't want to be in violation, going to our PIC hours. But I'm just trying to understand the reality of what goes on, you know, sometimes you just don't have it for a couple of days. This is the work. Can't be a week at a time, I'm not saying that, but I just want to be real about it happens out. State. We wouldn't want to limit the access to patients in that process, great burden. That's a main concern. That have patients not be able to manage their patients for that couple days, whatever it is, that could be interpreted by somebody.
How do you work method if you have the rule that says the wrong part? A little like you have to go back to the original, right? That's a different rule.
That's a whole different thing. We'd have to be responsible, right? We don't have language that way. We have the language. Other states might have language that the responsibility of the license holder or something, but that's not how we do things.
Mhm.
Some states have that, but I think we could ask for comments and see if there's a way that how it could be worded without putting ourselves in a little corner.
So I want to ask the board question. So we had originally looked at, because both of these involve temporary closing. One is the fact that you don't no longer have to return the license. Is it the pleasure of the board that we should go ahead and split these, look at that first one and take two separate votes? Or do you feel like they can be both moved forward for public comment?
I think the question is, would you like to propose that they be, both of these go forward for public comment as written? Or would you like to propose that only line 1 through 68 to 9 suggested amendments go forward for proposal and have these others dealt with separately?
I mean, I like to say an option because I think the other portion, it's almost sticks out for everything else, that you could take the first portions of that, move forward with that proposal, and then maybe ask comments on the other one.
Well, comments come through proposals. Yeah. So if you want a public comment period on it, it'll need to be proposed.
I think you want to do this. Is that a motion? I will make it. Okay, so we have a motion from Lori and a second from Donnie. And this is a motion to propose. So all those in favor? Daniel has a question.
I do, I just want to make sure I'm hearing, so what the recommendation is proposed to move everything as is, as it currently.
Everything as is.
Separate.
Yeah, everything as is.
Okay.
Motion to put. Let me start over. The motion is as proposed, so they'll move forward for public opinion and comment. And then we will look at it for next time as in whether or not we adopt. And then take whatever action with that.
Thank you for the clarity.
So right now we've got a motion and a second. So I'll go ahead and take that vote again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion will carry.
All right, we're going to jump around a little bit down to C.2.4. We're going to talk about fees later. All right, C.2.4 regards Rule 291.8 regarding return of prescription drugs. And this is a simple change. It's just on line 23, and it updates an error in the naming. It used to say nurse examiners, but it is in fact the Board of Nursing. So we're just updating.
All right.
Motion to approve.
Motion comes from Daniel Guerrero. Second from Suzette. All those in favor? Go ahead.
All right, the next one we have is C.2.5, 291.33 regarding operational standards for community pharmacies or Class A's. Specifically, we're talking about the redistribution of donated prepackaged prescription drugs. And you're going to see here on line 518, you're going to see some yellow highlighting, and that is language that is provided House Bill 4332, which amends Chapter 442 of the Health and Safety Code. Then you're going to see some fuchsia highlighting, and these are additional amendments that are recommended by staff. Starting on line 519, it allows a participating provider to dispense a donated prescription drug that is prepackaged and labeled in accordance with Chapter 442.0515 of the Health and Safety Code and this rule. Then on line 522, this includes some proposed language providing that drugs may be prepackaged quantities suitable for distribution to a recipient by a pharmacist, pharmacy technician, and pharmacy technician trainee under the direction and direct supervision of the pharmacist. And this was borrowed directly from Rule 291.8 33G, which is the prepackaging requirements for internal distribution. Next, on lines 525 through 531, you're going to see some included statutory language with the labels of such prepackaged prescription drugs being dispensed. This includes the brand name, strength of the drug, no brand name, the generic name, the facility's lot number, facilities beyond use date, the quantity of the drug if it's greater. On line 532, requires records of prepackaging shall be maintained, has a list of requirements there. And on line 543, there's proposed language that stock packages, prepackaged units, and control records shall be quarantined together until check/released by the pharmacist. And this is again to be consistent with prepackaging requirements that we already have in 291.33G.
Thoughts? Rick has made a motion to propose. Do I have a second? Donnie Lewis has made a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is now 10:15. We'll go ahead and take, let's do a 10-minute break. Come back at 10:25.
You find
Gary Cashtori, he did ask to speak on C.2.5, and I, in my haste to get us the break, did not allow him to come forward. It will not have any impact as far as the proposal forward, but I did want to give Gary the opportunity to come forward with his comment.
Thank you, I appreciate that. My name is Gary Castore. My company, Dr. C's Review Guides, I write the pharmacy law textbook that all the pharmacy schools use. And I publish and write MPJ review books and all my courses, so I'm really just into education mode. On this proposed rule on the donation of prescription drugs and the labeling, I just had a question and get a clarification, mainly to keep my books up to date. I'm currently working on the 2024 version of the books. You guys are always passing new rules, I'm always updating the books. So, I wanted to get a little bit of clarification on this rule. Because I don't have any issues with the language or anything like that, but I understand it's based on the House Bill 4332. But my question is, the inclusion of the rule in the Class A rules, why is it being placed there? Because under Chapter 442 on this donation process, it can also be done by hospital funding. You look at the definition of who a participating provider is under that section, it includes hospitals and also ambulatory surgical centers. So I'm just wondering, is that the right place to put the rule? Will hospital pharmacies still be able to participate? Any thought would be given to maybe place it somewhere else? For clarification. I know it's a technical legal question.
Yeah, that is.
I don't expect you to have the answer to, but it's something I wanted to ask. Get some feedback.
Well, Gary, as you know, the statute's going to trump a rule, right? So the statute authorizes. So if, I think it's a great point, we're gonna have to look and see if we do need to add language to another portion of the rule. But as far as being authorized, if you look at House Bill 4332, you know, it already says a participating provider may dispense. So if they are defined as a participating provider, then the act itself will already authorize that. And if you look at what's written in the 291.33 here, the only additional things that were added were those that are highlighted in pink, purple, fuchsia, however it looks to your eyes. So those would be the pieces that at this time wouldn't apply to the hospitals unless we did put it in the section of the work.
So the fuchsia part of the rule would be in the Class A rules. So would a hospital participate as a donor? I mean, as a participating provider, have to follow that as well?
And that's what I'm saying. If we wanted, if you're correct, because I haven't had it
Yeah,
previously, if you're correct, and participating provider does extend out to the hospital pharmacies, then we would need to look at putting this in the hospital pharmacy rules too. So those fuchsia pieces would apply to them as well. Because right now what's in yellow is what's in statute, and that's going to apply to everybody regardless of what we do here.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense because the bill has most of the language in it, so I think it covers it. But by adding that extra part, it's placing it in the Class A rules, it's just something I think you need to look at for, it would be Class C and maybe ambulatory surgical centers are part of the definition of health. And I don't know how many hospitals actually are participating providers that actually participate in these programs, but it's not consistent with the language that I saw.
Very helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Gary. And again, my apologies.
No problem.
All right, so there's one other thing, and that is that we have heard some feedback that those are at the back of the room, not people that are online, but are in the back room are having a difficult time hearing everything. So it's kind of a reminder to speak up when you speak. So we want to make sure that everybody hears what's being said. And with that, I will hand it back over to Tony.
All right, we're gonna start back with C 2.6. This is Rule 291.74. regarding operational standards in Class C or institutional pharmacies. The board voted in November of 2020 to adopt this language that you see here in your sheet or purple to 291.74. There was a formatting issue when submitted to the Texas Register, and it was recently discovered that the adopted language was inadvertently left out of the final rule. Since it has been a couple of years since the initial adoption, we are bringing it back to you now to correct the omission. So on line 204, it adds, or it includes the requirement that the average daily inpatient census shall be calculated by hospitals annually immediately following the submission of the hospital's Medicare cost report, and the number used for purposes of subparagraph C.2 1 and 2 of this paragraph shall be the average of inpatient daily census in the report and the previous reports for a 3-year period. We also made some grammatical corrections while we were amending.
Do I have a motion to propose or do we have questions?
Motion to propose.
Brad has made the motion to propose and Rick Titch has made the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next one we have is C.2.7. This is regarding Rule 291-129. This is regarding satellite pharmacies. And on line 110, what this does is replaces the word sent with issued for a certificate for a satellite pharmacy. And this is simply in preparation for that certificate to be issued electronically in the future.
Do we have any comments or a motion to propose? I think Jenny has made a motion to propose, Bonnie second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, John.
And the next two we're going to do together. The first one is C.2.8.1. This is 295.8 regarding continuing education requirements. And what this we're proposing here removes the CE requirement in pain management. And that used to be required by statute, but the statutory provision expires at the end of August 2003. That's chapter 481.0764F of the Health and Safety Code. The second CE course is a mental health CE that has a specified time frame that is about to lapse. Both of these will lapse on September 1st, 2023. So on line 62, you will see that it removes the CE requirement for the pain management CE. And on line 71, it removes the CE requirement related to mental health awareness. The next one, C.2.8.2, regards Rule 295.9, and this is regarding an inactive license and a CE requirement. And this does the same thing. It removes the pain management CE that was required by statute, again, because that statutory provision is going to expire at the end of August for the Health and Safety Code. And this used to be required to reactivate an inactive license. So on lines 33 through 37, it removes the CE requirement regarding the pain management.
All right. Pleasure of the board. We have a motion to propose. Danny Greer made a motion to propose. Donnie Wood has made a second. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passed. All right, John, you want to take us through our review of the government, important government code, our section that we just reviewed?
Sure, we're looking at C.3 now. This is our rule review plan. Behind that, you'll see the rule review plan for fiscal year 2022 to 2025, review and approval. State law requires that you review our rules on a 4-year cycle. While it requires that, what you are looking to see here is if you still need these rules. It is not about the content of them. And these were proposed at the last meeting. So these are for adoption today. First one, or the first set of rules, is C.3.1.1. That's chapter 291 concerning pharmacies, specifically non-resident pharmacies or Class E's. And the second group is C3.1.2 regarding chapter 295. Those are sections concerning pharmacists. And again, those are up for adoption.
Again, this is just that we still need the rule, not content. Do we have a motion to adopt? Jenny's made the motion, Lori has seconded, all those in favor? That motion carries. All right, John, we'll have you back in a little bit. All right, with that, I asked Linda to come forward, and we're gonna look at the prescription monitoring program. As Linda's coming forward, I do want to thank Linda for service to the board. She has announced her retirement and given us the dates, and as such, this will be her last board meeting. So on behalf of the entire board and the staff of the agency, we want to thank you for all you've done. And wish you well in retirement, but we're glad you're here for this meeting.
So for the prescription monitoring program advisory committee meeting, that was held on June the 1st via Zoom. Committee members are appointed to serve a 3-year term. Board staff at that time requested letters for committee member nominations for the next 3-year term. Dr. Sade was elected as presiding officer for term until new members are appointed. There was also a presentation by Bamboo Health regarding PMP metrics and key performance indicators. There was also a presentation by UT Center for Health Communications with an overview of the 2023 PMP media campaign. PMP funding update was also provided by Megan Holloway. I provided a PMP program update with a review of PMP statistics and PMP lookup mandate audits. And for the next meeting of the Interagency Prescription Monitoring Program Work Group, there was not a meeting this past quarter, but the next one is set to be held on August 20th.
All right, any questions for Linda? All right, Linda, thank you very much. So as far as a report on the compounding rules advisory group, since our last meeting, we have taken in nominations, and from those nominations, selections were made. So I wanted to go ahead and announce who those individuals were. You'll notice this is a much smaller group. We have a smaller time frame in looking at the USP rules. So we wanted to make sure that they could carry out what we needed. They're really going to be looking at and evaluating the rules to see what we need to keep, what needs to be removed, and if anything needs to be added. So there won't be all the wordsmithing, and the recommendation will then come from the staff as far as what they have recommended. So for the non-sterile, and I may slaughter some of these names, so I apologize in advance. Alame Abdu, Leanne Hampton, Steve Hoffert, Janae Chesnade. There you go. I know it is. And then Kelly Tran. For sterile, we have Jim Kirchner, Cole Netson, Angela Lott, Jasper Lavoy, Daniel Nyakundi, and Kelly Selby. And our board member liaison will be Brad Miller. So their first meeting will be tomorrow. At that time, they will set forth their calendar of subsequent meetings so that we can move forward with the implementation of USP or how it will affect it. Any questions as far as the compounding rules committee? Yeah.
It's not required to be an open meeting under the Texas Open Meetings Act, but we have to as public. It's a small room, it's a small group, so there's a bunch of people that are going to be standing.
All right, any other questions? Okay. With that, I believe Ruben will come forward to give us, our financial update. Ruben and Ann. Good morning.
Mentioned the budget analyst for the agency. Months out. I want to start by stating that I want to discuss in 3 parts of the agenda, 2 and 3. I want to start by stating that the financial documents provided to you, starting with E.1 is the agency's financial standing as of the end of the 3rd quarter. It is detailed by expense category and states the amounts and percentages of the remaining respective budgets as of the end. The following agenda item is E.1. This spreadsheet details the board's in-state and out-of-state travel that particular quarter. At this time, I want to ask the board if you have any questions regarding these 2 spreadsheets.
Board, any questions? All right, Ruben, you want to take a sit? 1.3.
At this time, I want to proceed to, as Julie mentioned, agenda item 3.3. I wanted the board know that the board did not receive any detailed report on this agenda item because at the end of the 3rd quarter, there wasn't any material changes to contract for goods and services awarded under contract Chapter 2155 of the Texas Government Code.
All right, and then Ruben, you want to take us through 1.4?
The report.
Yes, it is.
This agenda item has been provided to you. Is the preliminary fiscal year 24 agency operating budget. The first page of the proposed budget adheres to the General Appropriations Act, or as the acronym states, GAA. The left side of the first page reflects the agency's appropriations as stated in the GAA. To continue to the right side of the page reflects amounts designated by expense category, such as travel, professional fees, other operating expenses, salary, and they are reconciled to the expense category. I want to continue by referencing the second page of the operating budget. This page references the expense categories in a very more detailed manner. The grand total of this detailed expense category page reconciles the grand total of appropriations appropriated to our agency as stated in the General Appropriations Act. At this time, I wanted to ask the board if they have any questions regarding these 2 pages of the proposed operating budget.
I had a question on the first page. It says exempt salaries and wages on that first column. It's got $79,000 remaining budget. Is that for our AED?
And Ruben,
That's correct.
Okay,
so what happens to that? It gets put back in the general fund. Because it's appropriated and it's benchmarked for a specific thing. It's not used to get put.
and I was interested on the forfeiture of $93,000. And can you elaborate on where that, why we get that? On the controlled substances on, let's see on the page.
Where are you, Donnie? Let me.
The end of the proposed expense category.
It's 93,000.
Well, that might-
Can't find it on here, but the forfeiture funds were,
So last time.
okay. The forfeiture funds, we used to receive those, we're no longer eligible to. But on the federal level, there were some forfeiture funds that were given to us. And it was when, our investigators would work with DBA on certain things. At that time, they did provide forfeiture funds.
Okay.
They're federally earmarked for certain types of spending and they can only be spent for that, but we have been able, to roll it forward. But there won't be any more coming in.
Okay.
Again, but we're so limited of how we can spend it.
I've
It's not easy to
never
do.
remembered seeing that. Maybe I didn't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if it was on there before or not, but. We talked about it.
Any other questions? All right, we do need a motion to approve the budget. Donnie Lewis has made a motion to approve, Stephen Guerrero has seconded. All those in favor of approving the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? But. All right, so, our next agenda item is E.1.5. And board members, you'll remember we had looked at fees earlier, not knowing what was going to come out of the legislative session. So Ann's gonna walk us through, based upon the funding that came through, our three proposals again as to what fees could look like. And then from there, this is kind of why we get this section with our friend who has taken us through everything, John, and we'll kind of put those back together because we will need to approve what the fees will look like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann to walk us through this.
So the fee increases we're going to review are necessary due to the exceptional items that were approved and included in the agency's fiscal year 24-25 GAA appropriation. These did include legislative salary increases for state employees that would be applied in each fiscal year. Operating costs that were provided to us to increase quarter fees, expert witnesses, and increases in HPC and CRN. We did have legacy items that were granted to us that include TWID, wholesale data collection, advanced analytics, user profile management, delegate audits, and other fixes and maintenance for our tasks. And lastly, we did receive 7 new FTEs. Funding increase will cover the expenses for those new FTEs. The board was also appropriated GR dedicated money for integration and NARCS care. These amounts are exempt from the Article 8 special provisions relating to regulatory agencies, where appropriations are limited to revenue collections. What that means is that these are paid for outside of licensing fees. And that is why you will see the increase that we're proposing is almost half what you were last told the increase would be, because the licensing fees are not for integration. So if you will look at E.1.5, you'll see the proposed fee increases. The first chart shows you the current licensing renewal fee. And these are all based on renewal. I will note that new application fees assess an additional $3 application fee. Just to put that out there. On all three options, you'll see a proposed increase for the PRN surcharge on pharmacy and pharmacist renewals due to the approved appropriation increase for the PRN contract. Option 1 shows you a proportional increase applied to the pharmacy and pharmacist renewal application fees. Option 2 shows you a proportional increase applied to the pharmacy, pharmacist, and technician renewal option application fees. And lastly, option 3 shows an evenly applied increase to all three licenses.
All right. At this time, questions for Ann, and I'll open it up to discussion.
Are these renewal fees or just initial fees?
These are based on renewal fees for the three licenses. Brand new applications have an additional $3 charge.
So with the increase in the renewal fees, what is that amount total? For additional, I should say, what percentage?
Of the increase.
Yeah.
But I can get back.
So Rick, just so you are aware, in the state of Texas, the licenses are renewed every 2 years.
Okay, so.
So this, the column, the rightmost column in all of these is what the fee would be for that. renewal.
And this is for fiscal year 24 and 25. So anybody, when they renew within this period, it will reflect whatever our decisions today.
And do you happen to know how many technicians we have licensed here?
So total technicians are approximately 75,000. The registered technicians are, last time I checked with this, the TNT for 34,000 approximately, and the rest are all registered technicians. We do not include technician trainees in this chart because they are one-time licensures, not.
Kind of just to make sure there's a clarification from, not sure where John's question was. That when you look at all three options, the total amount selected is the same. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So don't look at one thinking that this will be more revenue as opposed to.
So, but option 2 doesn't, or option 1 doesn't include the technician fee. So you're just eliminating
That increase.
There's more
because the other two will absorb it.
Right.
And then option 3.
Doesn't apply to
Okay, got it.
And what's the ratio of out-of-state pharmacies to in-state pharmacies?
The last that, Misty gave me numbers. You know. Because I think the number I'm thinking of is not out of state pharmacy, but I can get back to you on that.
Well, we need to discuss that for.
Well, Julie, I think in the past couple of years, we've taken the stance to try to minimize the impact on technicians.
Yeah.
So to me, if I had to like strike off where everybody thinks, option 3 to me is the one that we're limiting first.
Yeah.
That's an equal spread. I think the real choice would be between option 1 and 2. And see what everybody thinks about that, but then at that point, decided one way or another, but I think we're trying to minimize just disproportionately what the impact is on technicians.
Yes, sir.
Who typically pays the technician themselves?
It depends on the company. So there are some companies that they reimburse technicians. And then there are some that don't. And if you look at like the vast majority of independents, that can be very, very.
Option 1. If you want to protect the technicians, I would.
So is there a motion there?
I make a motion about,
Oh, sorry.
You can choose one right now, but you can't.
Oh, that's
John right now.
Oh,
Gotta go. John,
Don has to take us through our rule.
but you can all talk and decide if you prefer option 1. If that's what you
Yeah, I
want.
agree with that option 1. Big thing.
All right, option 1. Wrap it up. John. What's this thing?
So it sounds like we have a consensus.
Yes.
So that-
yes.
And
All right, so-
Jenny, for the annual report for last year for out of state, there was approximately 640 pharmacies for that. And that's about regular.
Total number of pharmacies in state.
Total number of pharmacies in state, and the census tracted that is about 1,200.
I just had a quick question.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong.
Okay,
I apologize. Math on the fly.
okay, so Anne, go ahead.
I'm sorry, that is, total in-state pharmacies, that would be approximately 4,500. In-state pharmacies. That other amount.
Okay. And then Daniel, you had
Just a quick question, and I agree with what Rick was mentioning earlier about reducing the kind of the challenge on technicians. What was the decision of the board previously if options like this were presented? Okay, so we're being consistent.
yeah,
with the-
it's consistent, and when you look at, what a technician makes as opposed to what a farmer.
Yeah,
That was always, what we really looked at
got it. Thank you.
or took into consideration. Okay, any other points of conversation? All right, John, you want to take us back step then?
All right, we're going back up to C.2.3.1. This regards Rule 291.6 for pharmacy fees. And what we're going to see here is the standard biennial update to the pharmacy license fee. Second, you're going to see a clarification that a name/location/rank change is subject to a $100 application fee. You're also going to see the removal of a $20 fee for a duplicate license, and that is in preparation for when they are able to retrieve an electronic copy and just print it out themselves. And third, we're going to talk about remote pharmacies. So starting at the top, line 6 will include the new pharmacy license fee, which is essentially the renewal fee plus that $3 that Ann was talking about. It sounds like we're going with option 1. Will be option 1. Line 10 sets the biennial renewal fee for a pharmacy license. Again, that's going to be option 1. And line 12 clarifies that the $100 is for a name/location/rank change. Line 16. Well, remote pharmacy services have grown, they're growing, and that has resulted in increased workload and staff hours. So on line 18, it proposes to set a remote pharmacy services fee for an initial for renewed certificate to provide remote pharmacy services under 291.121 for 4 types of remote pharmacy services. The first one is on line 21. It's for a certificate to provide remote pharmacy services using automated pharmacy systems. $100. Line 23 for a certificate to provide remote pharmacy services using emergency medication kits. $50. On line 25 for a certificate to provide remote pharmacy services using telepharmacy systems. $150. And on line 27 for a certificate to provide remote pharmacy services using automated dispensing and delivery systems. $100. And we're going to go through the next 3 points together too. I think we're going to vote on all of this.
Yes, sir.
So the next one is for the pharmacist license, C.2.3.2 regarding Rule 295.5, pharmacist license or renewal fees. On line 8, it's where the initial license fee will be for a 2-year registration plus that $3. So it's the renewal fee plus the $3 that we talked about in option 1. And line 11 is where the renewal fee will be listed for a 2-year registration. And that's option 1. Then we're going to move to C.2.3.3. This is Rule 297.4 concerning pharmacy technician trainee registration fees. On line 9, we'll provide the initial registration fee for a 2-year registration plus that $3. And on line 11, it will provide a renewal fee for a 2-year registration. The next one, last one, is C.2.3.4. This is going back to 291.121 regarding remote pharmacy services. And you're going to see here, click on this, that there are some changes in green that were adopted earlier today. And then there are changes in yellow that are what are being proposed now. So this essentially provides that a certificate to engage in remote pharmacy services will be issued rather than sent. Again, this is in preparation for when a pharmacy license will be available electronically. So the applicant will simply retrieve the certificate online and print it. Therefore, on lines 55, 279, 531, and 768, it specifies that pharmacies looking to provide remote pharmacy services using an automated pharmacy system, emergency medication kits, telepharmacy, or automated dispensing delivery systems need to pay an application fee specified in Rule 6, which we discussed above. And then lines 58, 282, 534, and 772 replaces the word sent with issued for a certificate for a remote site. Again, this is since they're going to be electronic in the future. That's all for it.
All right. Any questions? We have a motion proposed.
Motion to propose with option six.
with option rule. Make the motion. So Bonnie has made the motion, proposing with option 1, Daniel has seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm not voting, I'm in favor.
Okay,
I had a question that didn't relate to the item.
okay,
Based upon our last few conversations regarding fees and direction that came through the legislative process, does this then mean that, because my understanding from one of our last conversations was that there was potential of a special session in August? I'm assuming then that means that there won't be any items related to the board in any of those conversations.
So we are not aware of a special session that
Okay.
would relate to
Us.
our purview. But we also aren't the legislature, and we're not in the know. So it could potentially happen, and if it did, there'd have to be some special provisions there if we did need, extra funding or something like that, for something that did happen in a special session. But I don't think we're anticipating that at this time. But again,
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball.
Thank you.
all right. And I did not see, if she has arrived, but is Raquel here? Oh, there you are, okay, good, that's what it, didn't want to proceed without you. All right, we'll ask for Carol and Raquel to come forward so we can talk about hearing.
Point to work hearing. Report.
One is stats chart that you're familiar with. Top of the chart, you review fiscal years, the numbers. Program. And the bottom part is a little for like the addition of the
For Caroline before Raquel again. All right, Raquel.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board and staff. My name is Raquel Vial, and I'm the director for the Professional Recovery Network. And I'm here this morning to present Karen's fourth quarter report for the current fiscal year. The Professional Recovery Network continues to receive the number of referrals regarding potentially impaired pharmacists and pharmacy students. Compliance by current participants is acceptable, and all concerns regarding public safety have been reported to the State Board of Pharmacy. In March, we welcomed Elodie Addy Coronado, LMSW, as case manager at PRN. On March 31st, PRN presented to the students of the University of Houston College of Pharmacy during their drugs, alcohol, and youth event. At this event, PRN discussed the topic of problematic professional substance use, as well as spoke about the PRN program and the services that we provide. In May, PRN attended the National Organization of Alternative Programs conference in Orlando, Florida. The topic of the conference was finding resilience in a rapidly changing and challenging healthcare environment. NOAC was established to promote public safety by developing alternatives to licensure disciplines, promoting safe practice and retention through rehabilitation, monitoring, research education, and standardization of programs, and to collaborate with other professionals and consumers to achieve the same outcome. The 2023 TPA Conference and Expo took place this past weekend on July 28th to 30th at the Westin Galleria in Houston. PRN had a booth in the Expo Hall,
where PRN staff was available to discuss details of the PRN program with attendees. PRN continues to explore opportunities to increase program visibility to create awareness of the PRN program, and we will be reaching out to Texas pharmacy schools for the upcoming school year. PRN's fall seminar is scheduled for Saturday, October 21st at North Conference Center in Austin. The legislative budget board numbers for September 1, 2022 to May 31st, 2023 were submitted to TSBP on June 9th. And these numbers include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students who are enrolled in the PRN program. And we have 4 volunteer pharmacy students, 1 board-ordered pharmacy student, 32 volunteer pharmacists, and 39 board-ordered pharmacists. And on the last page, you will find our expense report for this quarter. Any questions for Raquel?
Seeing none, we thank you always for coming and for your great reports and great work you've done. So we appreciate hearing and all of that. Our next item is our internal audit plan. I'm going to ask if Jeff Jones, Dana Grace is here yet. Do not appear to be. We had given them a tentative time. We're running a little bit ahead, so we will go ahead and ask Ann to come back. We'll go 50.3 and go to E.4.
E.4 is the fiscal year 24 goals and objectives.
Questions for Ann? Anyone take it for the strategic plan?
E.5 is the timeline for the strategic plan and legislative appropriation request.
Just take us through the 89th legislative session. Or any questions? Thank you, Ann. It is pretty easy. Not even pretty easy. All right, so we are on E.6. One of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ann. Oh, yeah, sorry about that, Ann. We do need a, yeah, we do need an approval. So do we have a motion to approve the goals and objectives? Second by Rick Tiff. And all those approved, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our goals and objectives are approved. I do see that our auditors have arrived, so we can go back to E.3. Mr. Jones, great, we'll go and invite you forward. We're not gonna give you time to sit down. I know, we're running a little ahead. We had skipped down, but since you walked in, I thought I'd go ahead and call you forward.
Thank you very quickly, but
I like it. Good morning. Thank you for shuffling things around, so we just walk right in. So you should have in your packet our status report as of August 1st today. We have one report to present to you for this meeting. If you look on the status plan, we had the enforcement audit that we previously presented, as well as the peer assistance follow-ups that we've already presented. So we have the report over licensing and follow-ups to present to you today. And with me, I have Jeff Jones. He's one of our managers. He ran that engagement. I'm going to let him present to you that report.
All right, so we perform follow procedures over licensing and renewals, which was an internal audit that we performed last year. There were 3 findings from this internal audit last year. One of them was a moderate and two were low. As a result of our follow-up procedures, all of the open findings from this internal audit have been closed in our remediated. The team did a very good, everything's closed. So to go into a little bit more detail, a rule change has been proposed or is being proposed hopefully today that would potentially expedite paper licensing for pharmacy. Additionally, the online application process has been updated so that email addresses are now captured on that. And that assists with following up on reminders for expiration. Additionally, user access, we had a finding around user access and the inappropriate users have been addressed, and additionally termination checklists have been developed to sort of ensure that that does not happen going forward. That was all for the licensing follow-ups. As I said, everything has been remediated from that internal audit.
The report, you look in the grading system we have for each year's of grading, strong, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory. It's received a strong rating. This report did. With that, are there any questions of all procedure?
Not a question, but we will tell you that we did move forward on pharmacists being able to confirm license. So we appreciate that recommendation.
Very good. So in addition to that report, we also have, I think on page 2 of your status report, we have a matrix on the back or a table that just shows all the open findings. So as of the end of this fiscal year, the Board of Pharmacy will have 6 open findings, 5 of which are a result of this year's audit. So we'll perform follow-up procedures, or in our plan that we'll talk about next. We have the 1 from the peer assistance program and 5 from the 2023 audit over the course of this plan for fiscal year 2020. Which brings us to the plan itself. And so based on our risk assessment, and we prepared a 3-year plan. We did update the risk assessment with management and looked at the plan again, and we still think that the information technology services is the audit that we should perform in fiscal year 2024 based on that risk assessment. So in the proposed plan that is presented for your approval is that audit over information technology services. That is an audit over what we typically call the central nervous system of the agency. It's all about operations support, network management. And so those would be some of the topics covered in that audit, as well as those 6 follow-ups for enforcement. So that is our proposed internal audit plan. And then also for your approval, we have presented a draft of the annual internal audit report. So the annual internal audit report is required by the Texas Internal Audit Act. The contents of this report are prescribed by the state auditor's office. Actually, just this morning, the state auditor's office released their guidance. They published it at the beginning of August. So we prepared this under last year's guidance. They released guidance this morning. I've already double checked it. The guidance really hasn't changed. It would affect nothing that changed in the guidance that affects this draft. So this is what we would propose on submitting. There are 7 sections in this report. The first section is just a statement of compliance that the pharmacy board will post this on their website. The annual report compliance with the Texas Government Code. Section 2 is disclosure of the 2023 plan and what we've completed. We do have one edit on that we will need to make before we post this, and that is under the second audit there with the peer assistance follow-up. It shows it's complete and all the findings are addressed. That's incorrect. We do have the one finding, and so we'll update this before it's posted. It will reflect that. But we did complete the entire plan for 2023. Section 3 is a disclosure if there's any consulting services that we as your internal auditor have performed. There were none, so we just stated that there were none. Section 4 is the report on our quality. So as part of a public accounting firm in the state of Texas, we have a peer review. Once every 3 years, another firm reviews our quality control system. So this is our letter from Hyde Bailey, who's our peer reviewer. And as far as the ratings, we received the highest rating, which is pass, and that's the last paragraph. Letter. Section 5 is the internal audit plan, which I just presented the proposed internal audit plan, so that would be disclosed as part of this report, as well as there's a requirement to disclose any high-risk areas that are not in the internal audit plan. And so that's also part of that section. Section 6 is a disclosure on any external audit services procured by the agency, of which there were none. And Section 7 is a disclosure on how the agency urges and posts the ability of anyone to broadly sue.
All right, are there any questions for either Jeff or Daniel? At this time, we do need a motion to approve. British has made a motion to approve. Daniel Guerrero, the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, gentlemen, for all the work that you've done. I know there were lots of meetings in between, and we appreciate everything that you've done for.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your statement.
Thank you. All right. With that, we will go down to E.6. And you'll find under E.6 a list of all of the college's pharmacy. As is required, we have to approve this list of institutions. And I just need a motion to approve. Donnie has made a motion to approve. Brad has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And with that, if you look under E.7, we do not need approval on this, but it's just for the board's information. This is a calendar of events. It includes our board meetings as well as holidays. And that way it's on everybody's calendar before we start the year. Any questions? All right. And with that, we can turn it back to Linda and ask her to, under E.8, go through the report on prescription monitoring.
Morning, everyone. So you have been provided the last fiscal quarter PMP stat sheet. Just some highlights from that. There were 8.83 million controlled substances reported to the Texas PMP. During that quarter, we had a total of 182,412 registered users. 65.38 million total PMP user searches were conducted, and 50.875 million searches were conducted in an integrated EHR. Also, there were 150 pharmacist PMP lookup mandate audits conducted for dates in the last fiscal quarter. For those conducted, 12% of those audits did not have the required PMP mandate lookup completed. And of those 12%, there were 66% that utilized Gateway for the lookup and 33% that utilized Aware. I also would like to share that the Texas Prescription Monitoring Program dispensation reporting requirements are going to be making an important update for Texas dispensing data users. The field for reporting the electronic prescription reference number, which is currently a required data submission field, will be programmed to result in a rejection error and notification if it's not submitted. The electronic reference number is known as the DSP 20 field in ASAP specifications set by the American Society for Automation and Pharmacy. The Texas PMP will send additional announcements over the next few months to remind pharmacies of the upcoming change to the DSP 20 reporting standard. Pharmacies will want to contact their software vendors if needed, as to, for assistance if there's any configurations or implementing any changes that might be required. The timeline for this change between September 1st and September 1st of 2023 and January 15th of 2024. Submission errors for any DSP 20 data that's missing or incomplete are going to return a warning. And then beginning January 16th of 24, the submission errors for these fields will generate file rejection errors and a notification to the pharmacy so they can make corrections as needed. And that's the information I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Linda?
I have one. At one of our last IC meetings, we had a question about a pharmacy submitting their records, but PMP didn't receive them. And is there a way that, I just don't know, we had to deal with that for the conference, but how does that work as far as with these new integrations? If a pharmacy submits it, but then it doesn't get transmitted properly, does the PMP tell them, or do they get a notification, or how does that work?
Well, if there's a technical issue, and they should get an error, and yes, they will get an email notification. And then when they log into their PMP Aware account, they can look and see if there's any pharmacy errors that need to be fixed and make those. Okay, I just wanted to also say that it's been an honor working with board staff and all of you over my 19.5 years of service to the pharmacy board. And I just want a bit of fun, fond farewell and express my gratitude to.
Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, with that, we will go to E.9. And we'll ask Megan to give us a report on fuel.
Yeah. So first we have the Garrett appeal, and you've heard about this one for years now. This is the case where the two physicians sued TSBP and TMB regarding the prohibition from physicians dispensing from office practices. There was a favorable ruling from the district court that dismissed the case, but the plaintiffs appealed to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. An attorney from the Office of the Attorney General, Solicitor General's office was appointed to handle this case for the court. In January 25th, the Third Court of Appeals affirmed the trial court's order. On April 10th, the plaintiffs filed a petition for review with the Texas Supreme Court, and the Solicitor General's office will file a response to the petition for review by August 9th. So coming up pretty soon. And then we have Lightcare RX LLC. This is also an appeal. The pharmacy and PIC filed a petition to appeal the board orders entered in the May 2022 board meeting in Travis County District Court. An attorney from the Attorney General's office has been appointed to handle this case. On August 8th of 2022, the OAG filed a plea to the jurisdiction, request for hearing, and original answer. And there still have been no updates in this case since the last board meeting. And those are all of our court actions.
You want to go ahead and take us through E.10, which is the legislative update?
So, behind E.10, there is a chart of legislation that affects the practice of pharmacy. And the first one listed is HB 25, which creates the Texas Wholesale Prescription Drug Importation Program, allowing the importation of Canadian drugs into Texas under a program administered by the Health and Human Services Commission. It does prohibit the distribution, dispensing, or sale of drugs imported pursuant to the importation program outside of Texas. Something to be aware of as pharmacists. HB 617 establishes a pilot project to provide emergency medical services instruction and emergency pre-hospital care instruction through a telemedicine, medical service or telehealth service provided by regional trauma resource centers to healthcare providers in rural area trauma facilities and emergency medical service providers in rural areas. This one, the center personnel shall include pharmacists. HB 3058 provides an affirmative defense to a violation of the abortion ban for a physician or healthcare provider who is exercising reasonably medical judgment in providing treatment to a woman with an ectopic pregnancy or pre-viable ruptured membrane. The affirmative defense also extends to a pharmacist or pharmacy that receives, processes, or dispenses a prescription or medication order written by the physician or healthcare provider. HB 4166 provides that a donated prescription drug may be accepted or dispensed under Chapter 442 of the Health and Safety Code if the drug is in its original, unopened, sealed, and tamper-evident bottle or unit dose packaging. Previously, it only allowed for unit dose packaging. We have HB 4331, which provides that for the purposes of Chapter 442 Health and Safety Code, a donor means an individual, a prescription drug manufacturer, or a healthcare facility, including a pharmacy, that donates unused prescription drugs under this chapter to a participating provider. We have HB 4332, which provides that a participating provider may dispense to a recipient donated prescription drugs that are prepackaged and labeled in accordance with the section and rules that are adopted by TSBP. It requires the label to contain the drug's brand or generic name, amount of dose in the drug, drug's lot number, earliest expiration date, quantity of any drug the provider dispenses in more than one dose, and it requires the provider to maintain records of each prepackaged prescription drug dispensed to a recipient. Should look pretty familiar since we just saw the rule on it. We have SB 14, which provides that a healthcare provider may not knowingly provide, prescribe, administer, or dispense prescription drugs for the purpose of transitioning or affirming a child's perception of the child's sex if that perception is inconsistent with the child's biological sex, and it does provide for certain exceptions. SB 294 updates the education code to state that a pharmacist may dispense epinephrine autoinjector or medication for respiratory distress to a school district, open enrollment charter school, or private school without requiring the name or any other identifying information relating to the user. SB 422 requires a state agency to recognize the out-of-state license of a military service member and authorize the member to engage in an occupation if the member is currently licensed in good standing by another jurisdiction with substantially equivalent requirements. SB 490 provides that a healthcare provider may not pursue debt collection against a patient for a provided healthcare service or supply unless the provider has complied with specified notice requirements. And it authorizes a licensing agency to take disciplinary action for a violation of those requirements. SB 629 authorizes a pharmacist to dispense an opioid antagonist to a school district, open enrollment charter school, or private school without requiring identifying information relating to the user. And then lastly, SB 2173 requires TSBP to implement by rule a prescription drug safe disposal pilot program. It provides for certain requirements for a pharmacy to participate in the program. It requires TSBP to designate a pharmacy participants as Texas premier pharmacy providers committed to safe prescription drug disposal. It provides that TSBP will assist pharmacy participants by paying for specified costs. It requires TSBP to perform certain community outreach activities, and it requires TSBP to submit reports to the governor and the legislature. It also provides that the pilot program and corresponding chapter will expire on September 1st, 2029. However, no appropriations have been received at this time to implement this bill or program, so we cannot move forward with it at this moment. Those are all the bills.
All right, any questions for Megan?
About me, we don't know.
Those are all signed into law effective.
Yeah, so if you look on the chart, it'll have the effective date. So some of these have effective dates that were earlier than 9/1 based on the way that they were written, but the majority of them, yes, are going to be 9/1.
Yeah, there were a few that were May and I think it was
Yeah.
1 May and 1 June. For the rest are September 1st.
And we want to be adopting rules for these that don't. For the box, we did. Yes, so if the box is empty, that means there were not rules needed.
Then you'll see that. You know,
We're caught up.
Yeah. Yeah. If we do receive appropriations for SB 2173, we'll have to look at that, but again, we can't move forward. Appropriation.
any other questions? Well, before we move on, I want to make sure that we thank both Megan and E.1 for all the work that they did. Going to the Capitol, staying on top of all of the bills. As you pointed out, things that we needed to start to act on to make sure that we were going to be in compliance. We're already prepared for it. So I just want to make sure that we thank both of y'all for the efforts through the entire legislative session. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item came from a suggestion from Donnie, so I'm going to turn it over to Megan to start a conversation regarding a continuous quality improvement plan for immunizations and vaccines.
So if you look behind D11, and again, we'll turn this over to Donnie since it was his request in just a moment. Staff, and by staff, I mean Caroline Hotchkiss and Ben Santana, put together some policy and procedure recommendations to help prevent immunization or vaccination administration errors in the pharmacy. We understood, Donnie's concern came out of some informal conferences that he attended. And often in those informal conferences, a recommendation is made that they do policies and procedures for this. So Caroline and Ben put together some draft recommendations for best practices in that area.
Well, just, thank you for that. No, the issues we were having, or I was perceiving we were having, is that there was not really anything standardized as far as to show pharmacies, if they did come before the board, some kind of a teeth where they could be improving their practices. Because a lot of pharmacies, we've had more and more than you think errors in administration of these vaccines since we started this, 3 or 4 years ago when it was started. So anyway, I just asked if there was some kind of a mechanism where we could train or help pharmacies avoid some of those errors that we're seeing.
Yeah, and so I think this policies and procedures gives some framework so that as when an error comes forth, they'll have something to go on. I do think it's important that we look at from the beginning of COVID to now the vast number of immunizations that were given by pharmacists and recognize that what we've seen is a minutia. I think it's important that we look at how safe pharmacists have been. But I do think that this gives, a tool for if something does occur.
So it would be something like education.
I was just thinking,
Have it available on the website.
yes, and this is what we need to do. If we have I don't call it penalty, but we could say, we need to do, a plan in place in your own pharmacy to avoid this. That's what my goal.
Yeah, so this could act as a resource.
Yeah, and when we were in those informal conferences, we could point them to this resource if that is the recommendation that we could put out.
Any other comments, questions?
From like the PMP, like the general avoidance. I think it says it includes, Caroline could probably speak to it better than I could, but that it includes measures from the CDC, the ISMP, and then some additional TSBP recommendations. Their expertise.
Is that one issue that I was seeing is a lot of pharmacists in train their staff in-house And the real, what they do in their own pharmacies is a different set of what I was just trained with ASHP just this year. And how the rules, it's just different applications of best practice. So I thought a difference in what we learned versus what pharmacists were teaching their own staff.
Yeah, and I think that, to go back to your question, you know, it mentions in there that it does come from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the website, ISMP, and then so Megan was correct. Any other questions? Concerns?
I think anytime we can present some suggestions to improve things, we're doing our whole. Great resource and. Just taking on the website and referring it as an ICU where an immunization is involved. One more tool.
Now, are most of the notifications like adverse reactions or is it the pharmacist said, oh. I think it's not one. Is that how?
I feel like the ones I've seen in my ICU. Whether it's age, inappropriate.
How would the patient know, right?
Well, you're right, Julie. The vast majority are done properly, and
Yes.
it's only when we see them, I'm thinking there's a void that maybe this might be a good guy.
Well, and you know, we strive to make sure that we have tools, as Gloria said, that we're giving tools, we're giving the ability to make sure that we're preventing any error. So I think it was great to bring it before, and I think that both Ben and Caroline together have created a really solid document that we can use as a tool moving forward. Any other comments, questions? All right. Well, again, thanks Ben and Caroline for putting that together.
So we're planning to like put it available out there. Now that you all have reviewed it, we can put it on the website, and start getting it out there.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Megan, you want to take us through the pilot?
Sure, we just wanted to give you a quick update on the pilot project. The pharmacy license was issued for Amazon shortly after the May 4th meeting. And we've been in communication with Sean Baird of Amazon's legal team. He reported that Amazon is confident that the project will start by the August 30th deadline. You may remember that was the deadline that was in the approval. So they still have a little while to get that done. And then they'll be here at the next board meeting to give you an update on how it's going.
Well, Ms. Caroline, you want to come through and give us an enforcement report?
F are your enforcement report. F.1 is your report on your quote complaint for fiscal year 23, and you're reporting the third quarter numbers from March through the end of May. On the total number of complaints that were closed and a breakdown of the disposition received. At the bottom of the chart, it compares the number of complaints that were closed with disciplinary actions to those complaints that were closed with other disposition. And on the second page, you're looking at a quarterly average of complaints closed the last fiscal year to those that were closed in the third quarter of FY23.
Questions for Caroline involving this quarterly report?
Okay, and then F.2 are your open complaints. The top chart is the last 5 fiscal years, and the second chart is the complaints that are open as of the date the report was ran, so this was July 17th, 2023. The complaints are broken out by their aging category for you in that column.
What is your assessment on the fiscal year 22 escalation from 21? You know, the percentage.
The number of complaints that were received,
What is your,
I mean, my thought is the COVID bubble.
Okay.
There was just a lot of activity
okay,
that kind of was generated as we started to reemerge from the pandemic.
Okay.
I think there was a bunkering down and then a lot more activity, and the pharmacies became busier places.
Are there any other questions? Seeing that. Caroline, as always, we thank you for everything you and your team do. All right, it is 11:45. We will go ahead and break for lunch. We do have, as far as our schedule, we're gonna come back at 1:15. And we'll start up back then. So at this time, we will adjourn.